Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Today we're going to be taking a look at a very popular question in the world of marketing and email marketing in general, and that is, do email warm-up tools really work? Now, here's the thing about email warm-up tools is that it's pretty divisive. So half the internet swears by them and the other half swears at them. And you've probably seen those screenshots on LinkedIn, like we've hit 90% overrates overnight, and thanks to some mysterious warm-up tool that supposedly revived their dying domain. And then you've got the skeptics, so the ones saying it's all snake oil and that warm-up tools are just a ShamWow of cold email. So what's the truth? And do these things really work, or are we just talking about the shiny marketing trick that worked in 2021 but doesn't really work for things like Gmail anymore? So we're going to take a deep dive into that today. So we're going to take a look at what email warmup really is, when it helps and when it backfires, what the data providers like Google, Microsoft say and actually recommend, and some of the tools that we've tried that still hold up if you know how to use them. So let's take a little bit of a dive into some of the details. Number one, and that is what email warmup actually is. Now, if we strip out all those buzzwords that you probably have seen before, at its core, email warmup is just convincing inbox providers that you are a real human sender, not like a sales bot firing off 10,000 cold pitches about synergy opportunities and that kind of thing. Now, in an easy way, you could think about it as a relationship. So you wouldn't propose in the first date. You need to build trust. You need to be human. You need to do it slowly, and you need to be consistent and have good behavior to back that up. And technically, that's actually all that email warmup does. So things like email service providers, so think about that like Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, they all track your reputation. They want to see that you can send gradually, that you get replies and opens, that you don't trigger spam complaints, and that you maintain a natural rhythm. Now, no one has time to send like 10, hey, how are you kind of emails every day. And obviously, that would be exceptionally time consuming. I know I've been there. Now, when you have a new domain, for example, or a new business, and you do need to start sending out emails, you need to do it really carefully. And this is where things like warm-up tools can be really, really beneficial for your business, and they can really help automate the process in a huge way. I've used these personally. I've seen what has gone right and where it's gone wrong, and hopefully some of the insights today will help you. Now, think about this as two main methods. There is a manual warm-up, which is like the boring but safe way. You send in small batches and you get real replies and you build naturally. Nothing wrong with that. However, it is very time consuming and it can be costly, especially for small businesses. Now, if you use automated warm-up, that is far faster. It uses connected inboxes that talk to each other, and basically they simulate human engagement, which is really cool. So think about that as just a way to build your sender reputation. And if it looks fake, if those replies come from the same like cluster of recycled inboxes, Gmail and other email services do sniff that out. So I would be really careful of that. Now, if that does happen to you, you're toast. Pretty much, email warm-up can work, but you need to do it really carefully. It is really tricky once you are blacklisted. And again, I've been there. I know what it's like to try and get your email domain or your sending domain or your inbox out of the blacklist state. And that is really tricky and it can take some time. So I'd recommend being proactive, following the right careful steps initially, and doing the right things to not end up there in the first place. Now, bottom line, effective warm-up is authentic engagement plus a gradual ramp-up. That is going to give you a far stronger sender reputation and better deliverability overall. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of a deep dive into what tools we recommend, what still works, and we're going to do a bit of a dive through on if you're using a tool, how to do it and what to be careful of, and which tools that we recommend that you should take a look at. Now, why warm-up still works when you're using the right tool is it can keep you safe in terms of not falling into the common pitfalls that some users may experience if you've not done it the right way. So let's talk about tools, and not all are created equal. And number one on our list is a Lemlist. Now, Lemlist or Lemwarm is a wonderful automation tool. So it's kind of like the OG of automation, if we could put it like that. And if it's done right, it's done really well. Now, part of the Lemlist ecosystem is Lemwarm. So if you have heard of Lemlist or Lemwarm, you may have come across one or two because they are part of the same ecosystem. And basically, they use something that is called a smart content algorithm to generate unique warm-up messages that sound human. So that is really cool. And it's a really useful tool in that kind of sense. It is quite easy to use. And basically, they will help increase your deliverability as well as part of that sender reputation. So we've got various steps, and you can take a look at their website. So they've got the warm-up section, monitor, and boosting deliverability. Now, we haven't touched on deliverability because we're specifically looking at warm-up tools today. However, think about if you've done your warm-up processes effectively and you've monitored your deliverability over time, you want to make sure that your emails are not ending up in those spam filters and they're not ending up in different tabs where your users are not seeing them. So think about these tools in the way that you need to not only warm up your email, but also monitor that and track that as time goes on. Now, the good part about it is easy to set up. It does send personalized messages based on your niche, which is quite useful. And it's just a really, really great entry-level option. The bad is that it still relies on shared warm-up tools, meaning like email senders like Gmail can actually eventually spot repetition. So that is something to keep in mind when you are looking at a tool like this. If you're new to this world, Lemwarm is a really great place to get started. However, it's probably going to be something that you'll outgrow once you start sending at scale. So if you're sending hundreds of thousands of emails a day, probably might not be a great tool for you. Now, next on our list here is Mailreach, and they've actually got specific pop-ups that talk to things like your spam testing, and that is something that's important, especially if you're an established business and you don't even know how your emails are landing, where they're landing, and if they're even going to your users' inboxes. I would recommend looking at tools like this to help you approach that carefully. Now, I do want to say with Mailreach is they do take a bit of a slower, more data-driven approach. So it actually links directly via verified Google Workspaces like Outlook and Zoho inboxes. So the engagement is like more legitimate in a way, if you can think about it like that. So overall, peer-to-peer interactions from active accounts are a huge plus with this tool. And also you've got live reputation tracking so that you can see progress as you go. I specifically like that. I do like that they've got additional things like the spam tracker. And you can check out various functionalities within this tool. It's not specifically just focused on email warm-up, but they do help you with things like spam tests and that kind of thing as well. Now, the bad with Mailreach, from my experience, is that if you crank the volume too fast, you'll burn your gain. So do keep that in mind to do it slowly and carefully. And I do want to say that you need to be quite hands-on with a tool like this. Some of them you could kind of just fire off and it will kind of do its thing. With Mailreach, it's a little bit trickier and you need to keep an eye on how things are going to make sure it's managed. But basically, they're kind of like the middle ground, if you think about that. Ideal for really consistent, cautious senders who want reliability without overpaying in that kind of sense. Now, another tool we're going to recommend today is Inbox Ally. And I would say this is probably the number one on my list for things like serious recovery as well. Now, say, for example, you have not done your email warm-up carefully and strategically, and you've damaged your sender reputation, and now you're being blacklisted against multiple email clients, for example, and you need to recover that. Inbox Ally can actually assist you with that process as well. So they don't actually simulate engagement. They're actually created for you, which is a really standout tool within Inbox Ally. Now, your emails actually go to real monitored inboxes that actually open, read, and even sometimes respond. I've tested this myself and it's worked like amazingly well, and you get like real life, or what looks like real life emails back. So you can actually test this on your own domain, which is really, really useful tool and a really useful exercise to have. So you can kind of know what to look for. Now, in terms of that, that is the kind of behavioral insight and signal that builds long-term trust. So really, really awesome tool to have a look at that. In terms of some of the pluses, like I would say they really do stand out because they're real human-like activity compared to some of the other tools I've used. It works across different email clients like Gmail, like Outlook, and Yahoo. And you can actually get live inbox placement reports, which is super useful. So you've actually got a dashboard that you can access and you can kind of see where your emails are landing, which is super valuable. I do want to say that they've also got a email warm-up tool specifically. So for example, if you don't know how to use a tool like this, they will actually make some recommendations depending on your goals. If you've been blacklisted, how many emails you're looking to send per day, and they actually recommend that for you so that you can get started carefully and accurately without trying to figure this all out by yourself, which is awesome. Super useful tools to have a look at in that kind of sense. Now, I do want to say they're a little bit pricier than some of the other tools I've looked at, but I would say they're probably a bit more full-featured in the way of email sending and tracking, email warm-up functionality, placement testing, and quite a lot of the other tools that we compare them to. Now, it won't save you if you're sending bad content or just blasting spam, so do keep that in mind. You need to rectify the content first. Make sure that you're using a tool like this carefully and accurately. Hopefully that helps. Keep a lookout at some of the tools we recommend. And then just to keep in mind that there are ESP recommendations. So before we close out, I do want to recommend that you have a look at things like what Microsoft actually says we should do. Now, a lot of us are arguing about what we should do, how warm-up tools may or may not help, but Google, Microsoft have actually told us what they want. Now, Microsoft says start slow, ramp up the volume gradually. Don't try and do it all in one day, and make sure your authentication, so things like SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are rock solid first. Google also recommends send first to contacts who actually engage before you get going, and also don't fake engagement, they will tell. Now, do think about things like using Postmaster tools to monitor your reputation deliverability, and some of those tools that we looked at today do have that functionality built in. So basically, there isn't really a secret. The secret is that they just want genuine sending behavior and not shortcuts. Now, whether you feel like it works or does not work, I'd recommend trying out one of these tools and testing out for yourself, because that is the best way that you can tell if this really works for you and your organization. Hopefully this helps. Thanks so much for joining.